Brandon Thurston and I put out a report today talking about the WWE Unreal series because we have gotten a lot of details on the series that premieres on July 29th. Again, they're going to be dropping all 5 episodes at once. And from our understanding is that they're in the midst of filming more episodes with the expectation that there will be another 5 episodes released in early 2026 as well. But just going through these. So episode 1 is going to focus on the Raw premiere at the Intuit Dome back in January that had the CM Punk Seth Rollins matches with spotlights on Punk, Cody Rhodes, and Rhea Ripley. The second episode on the men's Royal Rumble, as well as the program between Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens, which went from Saturday night's main event to their ladder match at the Rumble, as well as focusing on Jey Uso winning the Rumble. Episode 3 is kind of a heavy female episode with Chelsea Green winning the U.S. title, Charlotte Flair coming back from injury, the Women's Rumble and Elimination Chamber matches, as well as a portion dedicated to Bianca Belair. Episode 4 is going to be a really interesting one because it covers John Cena's heel turn at Elimination Chamber and the lengths they went to keep it quiet. This is what we're told the only episode that Nick Khan is going to appear in. And there's also a little bit with Dwayne Johnson and Brian Gewirtz and the New Day's heel turn as well. And then the 5th is the WrestleMania episode, speaking about a lot of the programs. And it sounds as though like there is no mention about The Rock's absence from WrestleMania, but from what we can tell from the Pat McAfee show, like Johnson indicated he was not going to be around for any of that. So I think it's still going to be interesting how all of this is handled. We have not seen any of these episodes, so I will put that out there. But it said that Paul Levesque is kind of your central figure of this series. It sounds like he's going to be in some kind of like a narrator, a guide for the series as well. And while they have emphasized a lot on kind of going into the writer's room, it sounds like they did film a ton of stuff in the writer's room, but a lot of this is going to be sort of the on-screen product profiles. And it was compared to me that it was closer to HBO's Hard Knocks rather than a Drive to Survive, which again, we will see how it turns out, but they've been working on this for a long time. And now we have at least a little bit more insight into what to expect with these 5 episodes. So with all that said, Wade, did you look at these descriptions and does it heighten your interest in this series? What are you kind of looking at when the episodes drop? It's G1 Climax season, and that means the Post Wrestling Cafe has you covered with podcasts covering every single tournament match. Plus, we've got Rewind Away going back to 2005 to review Vengeance featuring Triple H versus Batista in a Hell in a Cell match. John and Way are going to be reviewing F1 the movie starring Brad Pitt, and of course, XL editions of Rewind to Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown. Ad-free with the news of the week and your feedback. Sign up now at postwrestlingcafe.com.
I suppose it gives us a bit more clarity about what to expect in terms of like whether or not this will be any sort of like expose directly attacking the sort of like more controversial elements of, WWE. And it's not. And I don't know if any of us should have expected this anyway. What this is a promotional vehicle for the product, to a Netflix audience, to an audience that doesn't typically watch professional wrestling. So I don't think that they would get into certainly not Vince McMahon, but even like maybe as controversial as Dwayne Johnson potentially coming in and altering plans. I guess we can't tell if that will even be addressed. Just looking at these show descriptions. What was your sense about that?
I mean, I can't say absolutely. Just the way. Like the description I got was like, I don't get the indication that would be an aspect to this. I think that this is not going to be something where, I mean, it will be kind of interesting how Paul Levesque is presented, how Dwayne Johnson are both presented in the series. I mean, I would imagine it's like, here are, 2 powerful figures. And I don't think you're going to see any conflict between those 2 figures, if that's what you're expecting.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm curious ultimately to see like what the company line is about like Dwayne's involvement even in an elimination chamber. That's probably the one I'm most interested in to see the crafting of the Cena heel turn, and to see according to like the timeline of events in Unreal when that was in the works, when that was exactly planned, whether or not change plans had to be moved ahead, to elimination chamber instead of like a WrestleMania, for instance. That's probably most interesting. The rest of it like feels like, at least just from the descriptions, I mean, they're what I would hate is just like sort of a retelling of like what we saw on screen. I don't with like a little bit of behind the scenes footage. I think that wouldn't really help anybody. It wouldn't be novel really, for any sort of current wrestling fan. But I'm curious to see, okay, let's say even as something as like what might on the surface be as mundane as like the Raw premiere on Netflix at the Intuit Dome, focusing on a CM Punk and Seth Rollins. Well, what sort of like extra layer will they be showing us about the production of a show like that? Will they take us behind the curtain to the planning of a match, for instance? Like what sort of drama will be in place? How will they kind of like spell out the sort of like vocabulary to watch a professional wrestling match that hasn't really been spelled out in a usual way before, in a way that like Drive to Survive has been able to teach a non-racing fan how to watch racing. You're not just watching to see who comes first but and who comes last, but there's all these different elements in play about like teammate dynamics and just all these other things that might not be as apparent to a non-fan. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that's a series that thrives off of conflict and inter-team politics, and like that is sort of the dynamic. It's cool that it's racing, but it could be any sport. It's the principles that are involved, it's the characters, and it's the conflict among them. Yeah. And in F1 you get it's in some ways you can draw some parallels to pro wrestling in that we are going out there and we are working together, but there's a larger sense of we are all competing for a top spot. And in some ways we are pitted against each other, but when we are performing, like we are working together. And there's elements of that certainly lend itself in professional wrestling that other sports do not.
Yeah, like you and I, everybody listening to this podcast understands that layer of like, competition that exists just behind the scenes politically. Anybody who's on screen is competing for a promotion, to eventually become champion or at the very least to get pushed and get more screen time. That sort of thing is not necessarily apparent to somebody just watching professional wrestling for the first time. So is Unreal going to try to tell you that side of things, and how good of a job will they do it?
Yeah, like if Wei and I were both going for like the same goal and I was on my light tires, like would Wei tell me to slow down or would he just let me fly into
Would it be raining?
Yeah, while raining. That would be
in Monza.
All right, well there you go. That whole report can be found at postwrestling.com that Brandon and I worked on. And
great job. Well, you both had a very busy
well,
day.
let's tip our cap to Brandon Thurston, who had a very busy day. While you're at Post Wrestling, you can also find his opinion piece on CM Punk and his trip to Saudi Arabia, entitled "From Defiance to Dignity: CM Punk's Redemptive Turn Toward Nihilism." I will give everyone the behind the scenes of this, where Brandon sent me this and said, I'm thinking of throwing this up on my Substack, unless you guys are interested in it. And I was about 2 paragraphs in when I think I responded. I said, no, we definitely want this. We should definitely post this if you are willing. So this was some of Brandon's finest work.
This meant the better part of the day as the top article on Squared Circle. On Reddit. So gaining a ton of traction, and I think some of the finest work we've ever had the privilege of publishing at postwrestling.com. So thank you, Brandon, for offering that to us.